Hey everyone, welcome to Lesson 7 on scarcity, where we're going to start combining some of the concepts we've built up previously. So one thing we've overlooked so far is that resources such as land, labor, and capital or tools are scarce, and that means they're limited. So when we had talked about businesses previously buying up an oven, for example, to make bread to satisfy consumer demand, we hadn't really explored that other bakeries might also be competing for that same oven or other individual bakers. And they compete with their money. So whoever has whoever has more money can spend that to bid up the price of that oven and that good, that piece of capital or tool that's used to create more bread. And so because resources are limited, that means across every industry and the businesses and individuals in each one, everyone is competing for these limited resources, right? Everyone's competing for talent and for the tools in order to satisfy a consumer want. And that's really what we mean by the invisible hand, where this is here a representative consumer. Perhaps they 10% of their money they would like to spend on transportation, 10 on financial services, 10% on housing, and so on. But this representative consumer, which represents the makeup of the whole country, dictates what businesses produce to try to satisfy that want. And this is a dynamic picture. So as these consumer tastes change, the industries will change. They are a reflection of the consumer wants. So let's say, for example, that consumers overall want more housing. And so that increases to 15%. That means they have more money to spend on the housing industry, and the businesses and individuals in that sector are going to benefit. Right? They have maybe 5% more money. And in that way, they're going to be able to compete with that extra money and bid up the prices and buy more labor and capital and land to satisfy consumers who want more housing. And let's say retail has gone down to 5%, right? It works the other way as well. So people are demanding less retail. That means there's less money going into the retail industry. And some of the marginal businesses and individuals might fail because there's less demand to support them. And there's a less need for them because there's less demand. And so they in turn are going to not be able to compete as well for the limited, scarce resources in this pool. And so some of the bankrupt businesses will be releasing back the labor and talent they had hired so that other, the housing industry perhaps can use it more efficiently. So that's what we mean by the invisible hand, where the wants of the consumer is guiding businesses and other productive entities in the economy who organize the resources, which are limited, to their highest and best and most efficient use. Whereas maybe a centrally planned economy has a government dictate how these resources are going to be used in which businesses and industries, and they may not match perfectly with what people actually want. And so there's going to be some waste going on. And finance is just at this business and individuals level where they can raise money either through borrowing or when starting a business, the business owners contribute money and use that money to demand these resources. So that's where finance enters into this economic picture. But right now I want to move on to this idea of creative destruction. And what we mean by that is this is dynamic, it's just to the extreme where whole industries are displaced or replaced. So we can imagine previously, for example, we had the horse buggy industry where people would travel around on horses. So let's say it was called buggy transport, and there were some businesses and people offering services where you could ride a horse to get where you wanted to, and there was maybe some demand for that. But as a new technology emerged, such as the auto industry, so automotive industry, now the consumer or people who had money much preferred to travel by automobile instead of the horse buggy. And so maybe this demand shifted to here. And that meant that the horse buggy had less demand. For the most part, it's gone away. So let's just say 0. And that's represents a destruction, right? Creative destruction, a destruction for this industry, because these businesses and individuals are now out of business. They are no longer satisfying what the market wants, and that means the resources that they were holding onto, that they were using, can be released back into the pool of resources for the other industries, and the auto industry would demand more of the talent and machinery and parts in order to satisfy this new demand, right? And that's the creative part. This is the destruction part, and this is the creative part. And in the short term, we have some pain associated with it, because these individuals and businesses need to be restructured or reorganized, and the assets that they were using need to be released back into the resource pool so that they can be used for better purposes by this new industry that replaced it to satisfy the ultimate consumer want. So those are some of the implications from introducing scarcity, and I'll see you in the next lesson.